This is the Crossfire podcast, brought to you by Outlaw Legacy. What's up, guys?
Hello. Buenos dias.
We are back on the Crossfire podcast by Outlaw Legacy. I am Craig Russell, and my lovely wife is across from me, Amanda Roussel. Which we got to talk about that too. So you got to put that on your episode. And I have Dre.
Hello.
Alicia Garcia. Actually, it's Alicia Andrea
Garcia.
AKA
Dre. Wow, pulling the full name.
What did you say?
Le des ma paz.
Oh, dang. Yeah. Okay.
And then hyphenate deets in there in the
Not
next
yet.
year.
Whoa.
You'll get there.
Hold your horses.
You're going to have a long-ass name.
As your dad would say, one baby step at a time. All right. So we are here at episode 2. And the girls thought that I should go first with telling my story.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to be telling people stories, collectively, we kind of told our story in episode 1. And I feel that it is appropriate to tell each one of our stories individually because we come from, some different backgrounds. And we've done some cool things. And first up is Craig.
And go. Yeah, so I do think we all have interesting stories. We definitely have different cultural backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Even us as sisters have different cultural backgrounds in a weird, it's
I
been
feel like
different.
both of us got to experience it in different ways.
Yeah, different extremes.
Well, you both had, you Amanda, had your parents together.
Yeah.
And then they separated after Dre was born, and so you had a different parent and growing up just because they were not together. So that's an interesting whole dynamic just in the environments that you grew up in. So,
but we'll talk about that on our episodes.
Wow.
Now the spotlight is on
It's
you.
on Craigaroni.
All right. So what do you really want to know?
Your social security.
It is 523.
She's been planning that one for a while.
Yeah.
Tell us about you, where you grew up. Tell us about your family.
Yeah, so I am from San Joaquin Valley, Visalia specifically, and grew up here, was born in the hospital here, and we're starting from the beginning, so let's do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Queen Delta, where everyone else was born.
You were born there too, huh?
Yeah.
Were you?
Basic. Yeah. We're all basic here.
Yeah. So, grew up in this area. My parents were very slow. How do I say this? Like, as far as like getting their relationship together, they dated for 5 years. They got married. They had me after being married for 5 years, and then they had my sister, Courtney, after 5 years. So they kind of had this like 20-year window where they kind of had all these set up milestones, but just a typical entrepreneurship type family. My dad went to school in Louisiana at Louisiana Tech to get his aviation degree. Came home, and that was during Vietnam, the end of Vietnam, and couldn't get a job as a pilot just because there were so many pilots that came home with fighter experience. And so he moved home and started working with my grandfather in a business that he worked in LA with paving. And my dad and my grandfather and my uncle started their own paving company. And that was actually my first job. So I was probably 7 years old going out there and spending my summers. And every summer, basically from 7 years old to, I think, 19, I worked. And I'd be up with the paving crew, and I'd work all day. I'd run equipment as I got older, and by the end of it, I was running my own crew.
See, and that's what was interesting to me because when you first told me, I've been, working since I was a kid, and I thought, you went to work with your dad and you slept in the truck.
Agreed.
And then when it was time for lunch, you went and had lunch, and then you started telling me about No, you were like running trucks and stuff as a kid, and your family members were saying that, and your mom had a couple pictures, and I thought, holy moly, this guy really has done that. And if you've seen Craig drive a piece of equipment, it's like second nature to him, so you know he's got a lot of experience in it.
Yeah, well, I did do a lot of sleeping in trucks because, at 7 years old, you're still growing. And, I'd wake up. Basically, what I would do is I'd get up. My dad would wake me up. I would basically get dressed and sleep on the couch until we were ready to actually leave. And my mom would make our lunches. And by the time we were ready to leave, I'd just like slowly walk into the truck or go sit in the truck. And we would go to the job site. And a lot of times I would sleep in the morning when I was younger, until I could not sleep in the truck anymore because it got too hot. And so I usually woke up sweating was my alarm clock. And that was about 8 or 9 o'clock. So summertime here, it gets, in the hot summer, it's like
warm,
105.
Right,
Yeah. So by 9 o'clock, it's already over 90, 95. And so that's when I'd kind of roll out of the truck and see what's going on, and my dad would put me to work. So whether that was running a shovel, or I think I'd have to ask my dad exactly when I started driving. I drove a lot of tractors because those were easy, but I started driving the water truck, which was a 13-speed. I think that was probably, the first water truck I drove was an automatic, and it had an air ride seat so I could go up and down. And I always put it to the top, so it made me look taller, because if somebody really knew that an 8-year-old was driving a water truck on a job site, then
A citation.
they would have like come down. And this is in the early or the 90s, so it's a lot different now. But that was an automatic truck, so all I needed to do was push on the gas or push on the pedals, and that's about it. But I started doing the 13-speed, which was a Freightliner. I couldn't quite reach the bottom of the clutch to push it all the way up against the floorboard. So I think I had a 2x4 or something like that on my foot that I actually pushed that pedal with. So yeah, I was pretty young. I had this big brim hat that I would wear, so that way it kind of
getting burned.
No, not so much that, but just keep me from being seen.
Oh, gotcha.
More than anything. But yeah, I remember doing all kinds of jobs, and people would be like, holy crap, that kid's really young. He's doing this work, and it's just one of those things. It was second in nature, and it was a part of life for me. It wasn't a chore. It was just, you're going to do this, and you're going to learn something.
And did you get paid?
I didn't get paid until I think I was maybe 10 or 11.
But every parent will say, especially about their first kid, you didn't get paid, but I bought you your clothes.
Yeah.
I fed you.
Yeah.
That's true. Most of my clothes were bought by myself from the money that I made from the summer. And the other clothes that was paid for, that was my parents' rules. You buy your clothes, you buy your shoes, and that's basically your investment into school and stuff like that. And my grandparents, who spoiled me way too much, my mother's parents, Jess and Dottie, my grandma loved taking me school shopping. That was her thing. So she would go and drop, $150, which I thought was crazy money back then. That took me
At Mervin's.
Mervin's, yeah, Macy's, JCPenney's, all the ones that this is way before online shopping.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And grandma would never know what to do with online shopping. She would be in a total. Actually, she'd probably like it.
Until she figured it out. Yeah, she would be on Amazon.
She'd have it.
Her.
Yeah. She'd know the UPS and FedEx drivers
Oh, yeah.
very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she'd give them cookies and stuff.
Absolutely. But yeah, so I think I was 11 or 12. I'd have to confirm with my dad about money, but I remember the amount. My uncle, so my dad and my uncle were partners, 50-50 partners in the business, and my uncle basically ran the office and the bidding and everything else. So my dad ran the crew, and my uncle ran everything else. And so my uncle actually brought up to my dad, hey, I think we should start paying Craig. He's doing really good. He's learning a lot. He's kind of self-sufficient. He doesn't need a lot of babysitting. Let's pay him. And my dad's okay. he didn't want to bring it up to my uncle because he felt like it was his son, so he didn't want to do that. But it was Joe's idea, so that was kind of cool. And so one day, Uncle Joe pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you're doing a really good job. I'm proud of you." And I was like, "Well, thanks. You know, that's nice." And he's like, "We want to start paying you." I said, "Really?" I was like, "Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to do that." I'm like 10 years old. He's like, "Yeah, let's start you off at $10 a day, and we'll move on from there." And I was like, "That's awesome. $10 a day." That was amazing because I was getting nothing. So going
You're
to
like, money.
yeah, that's like $50 a week. Are you kidding me? That's crazy. I can go out and buy a brand new pair of shoes every day or every week, you know? So that's the first pay raise. And I think by the end I was making like $11 an hour, which was really good money back in the early 2000s, especially for somebody who's, you know, junior high and high school. I think by the end of like high school I was making $11, but yeah, I was stoked. And I was by the end I was running my own crew, or maybe not so much the crew, but I would be off on my own job site working and running trucks and, you know, just kind of doing that. So
Was the question ever brought up whether you wanted to do this as a career, or was just were you interested in that, or you just had your eyes set on something else?
Yeah, I knew for a fact that I hated working in the heat. And at that time I was getting tired of it. I was getting burnt out. I really liked it. I liked driving the equipment. But I think at that time I just wanted to do something else. So yeah, I was asked by many people, not my parents and not my uncle, whether I was going to take over the business, but just by people that were colleagues, or, you know, people that were doing other equipment jobs on the job site, like underground and electrical. They would ask, "Hey, you're going to take over the business one day, right? You're going to do that." And I never wanted to do that. I thought it was cool. I thought it was a great company. They did great work. I think that it was very sustainable, but it just wasn't a passion for me. Yeah. So that's kind of, that's where it ended for me. And then later my dad retired from the business, and then the business kind of dissolved at that point, you know, a few years later after that. So it just, it wasn't in the cards for me, but I learned a lot. I think it didn't break my dad's heart, but I think that he really wanted me to take it over.
Well, I feel like this is an interesting question, or I brought it up to you because we see in a lot of family businesses, a lot of people that we know don't have kids who want to take over the family business, and they've like
farming or anything.
Yeah, and they've dedicated their whole life to build this thing up for someone to take it over, and there isn't someone who is next in line for it, or their kids go off to school and they never come back, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, I think you should be able to follow your own path, but it's interesting to see how often we see that happening, and then either they sell the business or it kind of just dissolves from there. But it's interesting because I met you post that, kind of. I mean, you weren't really working for them anymore. You were doing other things. Your dad was still working at the time, so the business was running, but I can't imagine you in that setting because I've never known you in that setting. You know, that wasn't where we met. So it would be hard for me to picture you having taken over the business, even though you have all of this experience in it.
Yeah, and I think it was expected for me to go to college, and that opened a lot more doors for me. So, you know, that kind of went into the end of my high school career, or high school time, and then starting to go into junior college and university. And so I think just new opportunities arose. And, you know, I was heavily involved in FFA, which was, I felt like it helped me a lot because it did a lot of speaking. And I know Amanda has like this.
It's a love-hate relationship with the FFAers.
I think you appreciate it. But
I do. I appreciate the organization and what it does for youth. I really do. But this is a very unpopular opinion. Don't come after me. But I feel like it creates robots, and I feel like it creates a version of what we think we want to see in society.
We are the FFA.
Especially if you have a toxic advisor.
Well, that's a different story.
I think that's a different story. But I think the public speaking drives me nuts. Again,
It's the FFA voice that really
it
drives you
is,
crazy.
and it's just
It doesn't allow for personality.
no, it doesn't.
And I think that's really where
it creates a
bothers you.
mold. It creates a mold. We all know what the standard FFA mold is, state to state, county to county. We know what the mold is. And I mean, it does great things. Like I said, it's a really good organization, but I don't feel that it really does anything to help kids build their individual style and gain their individual confidence. You can agree to disagree. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents on it. So
Yeah. So my bringing it kind of back around, my dad, as a investment, the business was doing well. They actually got into farming, and so what I've seen through what's the program we use for history? Ancestry.com.
Ancestry.
Ancestry. Yeah, I think I said and how did I don't even know.
I don't know. You said it weird, but yeah.
I did say it weird.
it.
It's English first language. Sorry. Yeah, so Ancestry.com, I learned that my family, the Russell side, were farmers in every generation, which was crazy to me. I mean, even my grandfather was a farmer. We have a lot of German and Dutch heritage. We have a lot of family in Pennsylvania, and they were farmers. So it was interesting to see that.
You also have like the Mexican side of your dad's family too, who I'm sure farmed.
Yeah. Well, that's my culture is very mixed.
He is very, very, very diverse.
Yeah.
So explain that a little bit on your dad's side.
Yeah, on my dad's side, my grandmother was Mexican American. I think she was born in the United States. I can't remember if she is or she was.
I think she was. Vaguely, from what I remember, I think she was.
But her parents definitely were not. And then my dad's dad was German and Scottish, which is interesting to follow those trails back to their origins. But so my dad is half Mexican, half German, or half European, I guess I should say, because there's a lot of mix in there. My mother, her dad, my grandfather, Jess, was Mexican American. He was born in the U.S.
He was not born in the U.S.
No, his older brother and sister were born in Durango. No,
he was born in like Rialto area.
Chihuahua. They were born in Chihuahua, which is just across from Sonora, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my mom's mother was Dutch and English and some other things. She was they call her a Heinz 57. Yeah. And basically they had come from Texas. It's an interesting story how all these people came together to make me. But that's a lot. There's a lot of history.
A lot to unpack.
Yeah. That would mean
so all of that to say
episodes.
Craig is very diverse.
Yes. And yeah. So back to farming. My grandfather had 50 acres in Central California, just north of where we live, about a few miles. He just recently sold that before he passed to a dairy farmer. And my dad grew up at that field or that ranch. And my dad grew up very poor. They milked their own cows. They had, their own hogs. They had their own sheep. And I mean, they have the whole barnyard story. Yeah. So basically my dad got back into farming by an investment, and that's where they live now, was their first farm that they bought. And they created, an entity that I started working for them on the weekends. And, it kind of like didn't really grow, but just kind of like stayed put, and it was successful. And what his idea for it is it would just cover the property taxes, the income from the crop, which was walnuts, and that was about it. That's all he really wanted it to do. He didn't really want to grow it.
It was a hobby farm.
It was essentially a hobby farm, yeah. And so as the business kept going, my uncle and my dad made another investment property purchase, and later as they dissolved the business, they dissolved their land acquisitions as well. And they also purchased the property that Amanda and I live on, which is currently called the Outlaw Ranch. And that is part of the origin of where we got our name for the company.
Yeah.
So we bought that from a man who was had a career in the sheriff's department in the county, and he was actually running for sheriff at the time that we purchased this property. And so we called it the Outlaw Ranch just because the sheriff owned it, and it got
off of it.
It got away from the sheriff. That's basically what we said, and so we called it the Outlaw Ranch. So thankfully for my dad investing in agriculture, we're able to have this place as our home. So that was really awesome.
So, okay, tell me about college, because you pivoted, you went to school, and that's kind of where it opened up other opportunities.
Yeah. So with agriculture kind of growing my roots, I lived on basically a ranch, walnut farm since I was 11 years old. And so that's where agriculture kind of started getting in my blood. And I originally wanted to be an engineer. I felt like that was a super cool job. I got an internship with our local engineering firm, which is a friend that lives across the street from us now. And
shout out to the Lindahls.
The Lindahls, yeah. And I loved doing work with them. I had an internship, and I loved working with them. It was a challenge, though, for me because I was indoors and behind a computer screen, and that just drove me nuts. So I did my first year at COS. I went through the first year of engineering, took some basic engineering classes, took some other stuff, and I just did not like it. It wasn't really for me. So I went down to the ag farm, and that was a separate campus from the main campus, and I got involved with agriculture there. And so that was kind of my introduction into formal education of agriculture. And so from there, I went on to Texas Tech, went to junior college here in Visalia, and then I moved and transferred as a junior to Texas Tech University.
So how did you end up at Tech?
Well, I'm sure we'll get into how Amanda and I met, because we did meet at that junior college. Basically, we had a class together that the professor of that class had said, "Hey, I heard you want to go out of state. I may have an opportunity for you with meat judging. And how does that sound to you?" And I said, "Well, I don't know what meat judging is." And he said, "Well, it's essentially like livestock judging. You're judging an animal, but it's actually after it's been harvested. So it's like
Raw meat.
it is raw meat, just like that. Yeah, it is. Wow, that is a raw piece of beef.
Yeah.
So it's hanging. There's cuts. There's primals. We judge pork and lamb." And I said, "Yeah, I mean, I'm interested. What is it going to take?" And he says, "Well, it's going to probably be an 18-month commitment from you, but they're willing to give you a scholarship." So I said, "Okay, what does that really entail?" And so he kind of gave me the down low of what meat judging was, which I had never heard of it. It wasn't big in our area, but in the Midwest, it's like
huge.
It's like God, football, and meat judging number 2, and then everything else. So at least in West Texas. But so yeah, he told me I can get you in at Texas A&M. I could probably get you in at Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. Let me make a phone call and see what happens. So he made some phone calls, and he got back to me. He says, "Hey, I've got 2 offers for you. Texas A&M and Texas Tech are interested in talking to you, and I'm not gonna push you one direction or the other, but I'm gonna say that Lubbock, Texas is probably a better option for you."
Let me just say that it would have been so much easier in our relationship if you would have gone to Oklahoma State. And their program is pretty good. Okay, continue.
It's an honorable program. Yes, it is an honorable. I have a lot of respect for the Oklahoma State meat judging program, but I did like the feel. I never visited Oklahoma State until after I started dating you, but I loved the hometown feeling of Lubbock, Texas, of the family atmosphere of Texas Tech and their meat judging program. They literally took me in. This is what they do. They literally recruit children. They literally
Sounds
recruit
terrible.
kids, to judge for them.
And they really it becomes a family, the way that they bring you in and you're totally immersed in this program. You go to church together, you guys hang out together, you've got your pre tournament, things that you guys go out and eat, or you go and you watch a movie or whatever. It really became a family, and I think that was probably what helped the transition from moving out of state without knowing anybody. Right?
Yeah. I knew zero people. And the other thing is Mark Miller, who is the lead or the head of that department, he basically wanted somebody without experience. He wanted somebody who did not have any meat judging experience because he wanted to train from the bottom. And because he didn't want any preconceived ideas.
I could appreciate that. Yeah, it's easier to mold.
It's easier to mold. And he just wanted a good person, a good kid, somebody who had high morals, somebody who, was going to put in the work ethic. Because it definitely, you have to have drive if you want to go judge at Texas Tech University.
Well,
it doesn't matter.
I think they found a winner.
Well, at different judging teams, they all had the same work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
I was impressed all the way through
I
livestock judging.
I think that says a lot about the program.
They take it very seriously.
Yeah.
It's a no joke, all business. I mean, obviously we had fun.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of fun. And we had our time where we could screw around and joke and, be kids. But there were times where it was business.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't really talk about other other universities because I don't know how they did their thing. But I know that when Texas Tech went into a meat locker, you would hear the normal chatter just go down and just stop talking, and it would become quiet. And it's interesting to see that because it's such a I want to say a prestigious university, but it's just the program is so well known within that
community.
Niche,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that niche community that it was just, I've never seen that before. So that was really cool to be a part of.
That's cool. So you traveled a lot in the 18 months that you were on the team. There are two highlights that I can think of, but you tell me. Save the big one for last, but what were some cool travel?
Well, I think there
spots?
were, nationally, there were 7 contests that we went to starting in January and ending in October, I believe. So the first 6 months of your, I'm going to call it tour of duty, was basically practice and getting used to the climate of being on the team. And then after 6 months of practice and sorry if you can hear the clickety clack, that's Sadie walking by on our hardwood floor. We have
a full house.
We have 4 dogs in the house right now. Yeah. One of them is an old man.
A cousin.
Yeah, that's Dre's dog, Mr. Stewart.
Choochie.
Chewy.
Stewart. Stewie.
Choochie, Chooch, Magooch.
He's
got a
many names.
Chooch Magooch.
The man with many names.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, there were 7 contests. I think I counted at one time there was 22 states that we drove through or that we went to.
And a lot of them you drove. You literally drove.
We drove to every one of them in the United States other than the Eastern contest. I think it's called the Eastern. It's been 10 years since I was on the team.
That's the one, Pennsylvania.
It's in Pennsylvania, yeah.
And then you guys went into New York.
Yep. Yeah, we went to New York City. We rented cars while we were there.
Mm-hmm. So I'd say that one was a highlight for me, even though I didn't go, because you sent me a very special picture. Do you remember that? When you went to...
That's gross.
No.
Well,
It's a picture of you and Joe Paw, the Joe Paw statue,
Oh, yeah.
before they tore it down.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
That's
so
a-
Amanda had such a big passion around sports. And Joe Paul had just retired, I believe. He may have been still coaching at that time.
No, they had just forced him
Just
out,
forced him to
him
retire.
into retirement. Yeah.
And we went to Penn State,
Mm-hmm.
and we were there in what's the city? Happy Valley? Not Happy Valley.
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh, Penn State people are gonna
I know
fry
you're
us.
screaming at us right now. I should know this.
Hang on.
College or state college.
State College.
Mm-hmm. It's a state college.
Man, what?
You had a good opportunity to use that tune.
Oh, the tune. I should have thought about that. Hang on.
Good job, Dre.
You should be running the board.
Yeah.
It's in State College, Pennsylvania.
We're getting used to this, right? Like it's all. This is our
Well, you're
second
terrible.
episode. Yeah. Well,
Your
thanks.
job. Just kidding.
I haven't watched enough YouTube and things like that. Anyways.
So it was at the time around the scandal that was happening, and Joe Paul was no longer coaching at the time. He was pushed out, or whatever the term was. And there were a couple weeks in between there where the statue was up and then they removed it. But that was your big trip. You guys went into New York City.
Well, what was cool about it was the meets lab was right across from right across from the stadium, and basically the front of the stadium was where that Joe Paul statue was, and the whole team got a picture with Joe Paul, and we knew how special that was because he is just
a legend
in
Love
the game.
him or hate him, he's a legend
in college football. And so I think there's a picture of him actually wearing a Texas Tech meat judging hard hat helmet.
That's cool.
So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Okay, so you've talked about all of the traveling that you did nationally, but you also traveled.
What was the big one?
Oh, the big one.
Yeah, so what they're alluding to, folks, is Texas Tech was invited to represent the United States in 2011. I think they've done it again since.
They've done it a few times, and different schools get to go.
Yeah, so every year, I think it's based out of Australia, because it's Australian. They basically invite a United States team because we invite Australian teams to come and do our contests. And so we got invited to do that year, and this was so the Happy Valley, it's another name for Penn State or something like that. I don't know. I see Happy Valley on campus here. Anyways, so that was the first time that Texas Tech had been invited. I think OSU was the previous year, and I think Colorado State went before that. So this is in 2011. And they invited us. We took 14 kids. Yeah, we took 14 kids from our 16. I think 2 either couldn't go or something. We may have picked up 2 more kids after that because it was kind of like the mid-season break. And so we took 14 and we spent 2 weeks, I think 2 weeks in Australia, and we traveled all over the East Coast, starting from Brisbane and going down to Sydney. And it was amazing. That is a highlight of my life. I mean, that was so much fun. We learned a lot. We had to learn a different technique of meat judging because there's the U.S. standard, and then there's the Australian standard, which is all metric, and they have different breeds of animals that are, over there that are, you have the Bos Taurus and the
kangaroo,
Bos Indicus. We did.
Just kidding.
We did eat kangaroo.
How did you prepare for that?
Well, it started in early summer. I think we went in like June. We actually started like in April, probably.
I think you went in June. We had only been home a few weeks.
Yeah.
If that.
And so we started training a few months ahead, and we had to learn metric because our eye was trained for inches, and we'd have to go and basically look at a ribeye on a hanging beef and basically say, okay, this ribeye is this many square inches. The fat on the back was this depth or this thick in inches. And so we had to basically switch our mindset to millimeters. And it's pretty easy once you kind of get a grid down of how big a square millimeter is, or the distance of a millimeter. But yeah, it's a totally different type of judging. And they have different cuts. They have different cuts with different names, or they have some of the same names or some of the same cuts, but with different names. And so that was a challenge learning those as well. But
So how'd you guys do?
well, from what I remember, I'd have to confirm this with looking it up, but from what I remember, we had 13 out of the 14 kids place top of the contest.
Wow.
So basically saying that the top 13 scores were Texas Tech University, and we only scored 4, but the top 13, and then there was one Australian student, and then the 14th person. So basically our entire team was better than the rest of the contest.
So basically you guys took the top 15, in the top 15.
We were all
the
in the
whole
top
team.
15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so what was cool is we could have chosen any student on our roster to score those 4 scores, and we would have won the contest. So yeah, we set all kinds of records that were just, it was a good feeling for us. But what was funny is we really didn't see it as a competition, but more of an opportunity to just explore and meet people from the other side of the world. I mean, Australians, they have this funny, like, I don't know, they just had this attraction towards the Texas Tech team. Like, they all thought we talked funny.
Well, I think it's Texans in general, right?
Yeah.
Like the rest of the world looks at America and they think of Texas and cowboys, and
it's exactly what it was.
The way
were
that we
asked
look
some
at everyone else
crazy
foreignly,
questions. Yeah, we were asked crazy questions like, do you ride your horses to school? And, just the typical.
your cowboy hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. There were people that were teaching some of the Australians how to 2-step dance, and it was a lot of fun. And they were very welcoming. They were just a lot of people that were just super happy to be around us.
Mm-hmm.
And it was crazy how expensive beer was there, though. Like, at that time, this was in 2011, the market was just starting to kind of tip back to where the American dollar was getting stronger, but the Australian dollar at the time was actually worth more than the American dollar. So it was extremely expensive for us to be there, where I think now it's like, I don't even know, but it was like 75 cents versus our dollar.
Wow.
So, when we could go there, now it would be much cheaper, but yeah. So it was expensive to be there. Just a good time. We got to see a lot of cool stuff.
And you broke your toe while you were there.
Yeah, I didn't break it. I was an idiot wearing flip-flops on a trail. We went hiking. This is kind of like an improv hiking trip that we found. Like, we literally just pulled off the side of the road into the rainforest.
If you know Craig, flip-flops are part of the everyday uniform.
I'm about it. Yeah, I'm all about it. It's about comfort and ease and efficiency for me, and that's what it was that day.
So you were
well.
cash. You were dressed cash. You weren't expecting to go hiking. You guys started hiking.
We were in this rainforest, and I still have pictures of my friends and I standing on huge logs that were like down trees and stuff, and like being stupid. And I was climbing on this rock, and I slipped because it was like mossy and dewy, and I like banged up my big toe.
It was nasty.
Very,
That's the one
very
thing I
bad.
remember.
And it was like a wet environment, so it got infected.
It got
and it
pretty
was just
Yeah, it was
Then
gross.
you came home and had to. It took a while to.
the other
take care
thing
of it.
which was interesting too was the fact that they don't have over-the-counter antibiotics like what's the cream
Like a Neosporin.
Neosporin. Yeah. So we were like going to a drugstore and asking for Neosporin, and they're like, you have to have a prescription for that. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, this is the United States. And I was like, whoa, okay, buddy. Like, hey, don't get after me.
Throwing shade.
Yeah. So anyways, the other highlight of that was I got to fly on two of my all-time favorite or bucket list aircraft, and that was an A380, which is a big mother. That thing is a flying city. Flew on Qantas both ways, and then the other one was a 747, which still to this day is really just an iconic piece of aircraft aviation.
So if you haven't noticed, Craig is an aviation fanatic.
Junkie.
Fanatic.
Yeah, well, the cheapest way I can get in and stay in aviation is drone piloting, and that's I love doing that. But this last week I got to go fly in a Cessna 172 and flew around the house and went up to the lake in the mountains and just kind of flew around, and it was
Would you
a
do it again?
blast. Oh, every day.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, twice on Sundays.
That gets expensive.
It does get expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were on the meat judging team, but what did you major in?
I majored in animal science with, I think originally I was a meat science specializing emphasis. Yeah. And then I think I graduated with animal production.
Yeah, I think that's what you did.
Yeah. So, which I didn't really use in my career coming out of college. I got hired by a ag chemical company in Tulare, California, and I really learned a lot from them. But what I found was the fact that biology, in a very simplistic way, is very similar in plants and animals. And so I saw that nutrient uptake and nutrient efficiency and all these things are very similar in plants that they are in animals. And you feed plants, you feed crops just like you feed animals to get a yield. So that was the beauty of a crossover for me.
Cool. So, okay, you got hired by this company. We moved home so that you can start this job. And
I told you that I had to move home because I had a job. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had a job.
Mhm.
You were basically
I had
at the university. You had a job.
Yeah,
you had a pension. You had everything.
You were debating whether or not you wanted to stay.
Yeah, because I had a job and I had this pathway to go on to get my doctorate. And I remember, too, the day of graduation. Behind the scenes, when you show up, they take your name to make sure that you've checked in, right? And then they have your diploma for you. They give that to you. So I went and they were like, okay, it says here that you're staying on for your doctorate. And I remember thinking, is this a sign? Am I supposed to be staying? And it was so hard for me to turn that down. But yeah, so although I had a job, you had the better paying job. And so it was like, okay, if we wanted to make this work, one of us had to give, right? So it wasn't like we were moving to the East Coast or, Nebraska or something. We were moving back home. So it made sense to come back home.
Yeah, and Amanda's family's here. My family, all of my family is here at the time. Now my sister lives in Lubbock, Texas, or the surrounding areas of Lubbock, and she's going to be getting married here to her fiance this year.
Months.
And so there is no way she's coming home because he is a farmer out there and they're doing very well for themselves, and there's just no opportunity to transfer that to California. There'd be no reason to. They're doing great out there. So
Okay, but you came home, you started this job, and you started running from day one. It was nonstop.
yeah, so this job kept me very busy. I had a lot of large accounts that I grew into and started managing for them, and it was just it was really hard for me. They expected a lot out of me, and for me, it was a tough job, especially when I had duties at home with our own farming operation, and then I had Amanda working, and she was at first she was working for the local farm bureau, and then she started basically it was Brady Media, which turned into Outlaw Consulting Group when I came on, and that was tough because she was working basically 7 days a week just to make ends meet, and I was working 5 days a week or 6 days a week sometimes And I wanted that one day off to where we could spend time together. And
Yeah, he would get really angry because he'd come and it made sense. On weekends, you didn't want to talk about work at all. You didn't want to see me working. You didn't want to talk about work. When we went on vacation, you wanted to be as disconnected as possible. And in the freelance world, when you first get started, that's
not an option.
Not an option. You're working all the time. And so it was hard. There was a lot of clash there, but I think you were just so stressed out and overwhelmed that you couldn't even enjoy your time off by yourself. Like, because there was this, not paranoia. Well, I guess so. I would say paranoia to some extent that you were going to have to justify taking your time off. And there was a while there where I just thought, okay, this isn't a long-term thing. It can't be sustainable long term. So something's going to have to change. And I think I don't know what it would look like for you to come on to Outlaw, but I think you need to come to Outlaw. Like, you need to look at making a change. And it took a while to kind of convince you to do it. And then one day you're just like, I'm done. I'm making the jump.
Well, moral of the story was basically that you make a priority to do something, and when that priority is met, then you make the jump. And the thing of it is, I wasn't prioritizing getting out, and Amanda had finally said, that's our goal. That's what I want to do for us, is to get you out of working that type of business or environment, and we can build something together. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how much time and investment that's going to take. And it may hurt at first, because my job was supporting the business you were creating.
Bread and butter. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was a challenge to give that up, because that was a paycheck constantly.
Insurance, it was everything.
Well, we didn't have insurance at that time, but we would have had insurance continuing. Yeah. We were still under 26, so we were on our parents' insurances. Yeah.
Oh, the joy of that.
Yeah. But when we made it a priority that basically said, okay, this is going to be the end goal. We're going to get you out of there, and we're going to start doing our own thing. So when that happened, then we jumped. And that's the biggest thing, that, guys, if you are not happy with your job and you want to do something else, if you've already made that decision that you want to do something else, you need to do it.
Yeah.
Because the longer you stay in that rut that you're in, or that pathway, the less time that you have to do the next thing.
You're wasting time. You're wasting time at a place, in a position that doesn't make you happy, when you could be investing that passion and that time into something that is going to, you're going to reap the benefits of that directly. And it could be anything. It could be a huge business. You could be a dog walker, whatever
your passion is.
Whatever it is that makes you excited to get out of bed every day, and you look forward to doing that every day, go for it. Make the jump. I tell everybody that. I've been telling that to Dre for years.
I think that's why Dre's working with us now, is because she made that jump.
That's why I'm here now.
Yeah, because she was doing odd jobs, nothing really with consistency, and all of a sudden she said, I'm just burnt out. I'm tired of it. Let's do something else. And so we kind of helped her.
And sometimes you don't know what it is, but you know what you don't want to do, and that helps. Yeah. That's, I think, is the biggest help. And
I think all the jobs that I had were like pretty different.
Yeah, they were.
I got to do a little bit of everything. So after that, I got to see what I really liked and what I didn't, and it made the decision easier, I think.
Yeah, and I think when you're passionate, it's going to work. When that is your only option, you're going to make it work. So I think that's the way that it worked for us. When you left your job, we had no other option but to make this work, and here we are.
Yeah. So basically at that point, we were getting married. This was in 2016. I had already decided that I was going to jump. Amanda had already decided that I was going to come on board somehow in some capacity. And she was getting to the point with Outlaw that we were needing more help. She couldn't do all the other stuff and take care of the clients at that time. So the other stuff, meaning like all the legal documents, all the billing,
the
all the
invoicing and the day-to-day operations, and basically account managing and making sure that everything was running
and getting done
and getting done.
and
Yeah.
organizing it to
Mhm.
where, you know, we could dedicate our schedules and things like that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we jumped, and it has paid off. And I can't say how lucky we are, but I can also I can say how hard we worked.
Mhm.
And we worked very hard to get to where we are now. There have been times where we lost sleep, we've cried,
It's been ugly.
we've damn near bled.
Yeah.
I mean,
We have.
we've stubbed our toes and stuff.
It's been pretty ugly.
We've
But
gone out in the backyard and thrown up because we've
Yeah.
been so stressed out and just disgusted with where we were and just
trying to figure out how we were going to move ahead.
And we've had terrible clients sometimes,
Yep.
and we've had amazing clients.
Mhm.
And you know, you have to basically find a way to get rid of your bad clients and find a way to keep your good clients and find a way to multiply and continue to get the clients that you want.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's been a, my dad has always said this, when he knew that we were going to create our own thing. He says, you know, you guys, you're going to have the best education that money can buy, or that, you know, you can get, is by starting your own business, because you have to live it.
Mhm.
There is no way, unless you're already getting into an established business, if you're starting from zero, you have to learn everything. And it is tough. It is hard. It's the hardest thing I have ever done. I'm sure that's the same way with you. But it's also been one of the most rewarding things that we've ever done.
Yeah, I
So-
say this all the time. The lows are low and the highs are intoxicating, and that's what keeps you coming back for more. And you have to really be resilient, because you're going to get kicked down over and over and over and over again. And you have to be able to say, tomorrow's going to be better, or later is going to be better. It's going to be okay. It's going to get better. We're going to do good, whatever. And if you can't continue to pick yourself up and move forward, it's going to be a rough ride for you. And luckily, we have each other, so that there are days when I'm down and you're the one picking me up, and then other days it's the other way around. It's rare that we're both down at the same time. It's happened, and they've been really dark days. But to have a companion who's in it, in the thick of it with you, I mean, this is our life. You know, it's our business, but it's also everyday life. And that's why I think that deep down in my core, I don't think there's a true work-life balance, because I think it's all one life, and you just have to learn how to
Compartmentalize.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out how to make it work, but there is no off switch. But when you have the ability to dictate your life and what your future can be, I mean, that's an incredible place to be at. So, all right, let's wrap this up. And what advice would you give yourself? What advice would you give to, like, senior year in high school you, and then like senior year in college you?
That's a good question. You know, I always, and I think we kind of share this because we've said it to each other. It's interesting when you think the same things separately, and then you talk to each other about it, and it's like, holy crap, I've had that thought as well. One of the things that I always thought is that I would do something really cool, something very worthwhile to the human race, something that was very fulfilling. And when I talked to you about that, you're like, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to do as well. And so I feel like you should always kind of strive for being better, being a better person, doing better things, and helping each other out, because that's something that pays you back 10 times what it's worth that you put into it. And I've always been taught what you put into something is what you get out of it. And so whether that's a career or education or a hobby, if you put effort into it, you're going to get something really valuable out of it. So, yeah, not to get too sappy, but that's kind of how I feel about, you know, just life in general. And I think that when you make something a priority, it happens. And yeah, and don't give up. That's the other thing. Like there were times where it's like, gosh, we don't know how we can continue, but we wake up the next day and we make the 60-foot commute to our office from our room and just continue on. And there's, like you said, there's been very high highs and there's been very, very, very low lows, or at least you think they are. And then you put it in perspective of what people can go through is, you know, and the terrible things in the world. And
it's all about perspective.
Everything is perspective. Exactly. I've been telling Amanda that for a long time. And, you know, she's like, wow, we made a lot of money, or, hey, we don't have that much money. And I said, well, it's all perspective. We had a lot more money than what we did when we started out. And, you know, it's just one of those things, and it's working out. Everything works out for a reason. And if you stay the path, it's going to continue that way. So with that, I really appreciate you guys listening to my story. We will come back to you with episode 3 with, who are we doing next?
We're doing Dre.
Ooh.
Ooh, the Dre story.
Exciting. Not really.
It's going to be exciting.
We'll try to make it as exciting.
It is way more comical than my story.
Oh, yeah.
My story was like...
Everything with Dre is much more comical.
Yes, that is very true.
That's true.
So thank you guys for tuning in. We will catch you in a little bit. This is the Crossfire podcast, brought to you by Outlaw Legacy.